It's time for a rousing round of Who Gets Smacked by Toronto, Part 3. Welcome to OWCS NA Stage 3 Main Event. This is where we all come around and we see who truly is worthy of being the number 2 team in this region. That's the true championship of these tournaments over here. And thanks to M80 disbanding, that top 3 has never been more wide open, with there being multiple suitors in prime position to take it. After the standings updated, this is where we currently sit, with NRG Shock and TSM occupying spots 2 and 3. NRG find themselves with a pretty good cushion over everybody else, and if they maintain their pace, they should be fine to make top 3. But one little slip up, and with the amount of points on the line, things can change pretty fast, so they've got to keep their foot on the gas. It's that number 3 spot where things are very tight right now. Thanks to M80's explosion, TSM currently occupy it, but they haven't played all that great since the beginning of Stage 2, which could mean there's a lot of leeway for either Citrus Nation, Nightmare, or even Timeless to go above them. Those competitors, plus a few others I did not mention, are going head-to-head in the following bracket. Excluding Toronto, there's some interesting pairings, and we could have some insane matches from some of NA's best. But that begs the question, who's gonna make some magic happen? Let's begin with an evaluation of our talent with a quick recap and debriefing of the groups. In Group A, we can highlight it briefly. It's the Toronto group. Of course, they got through absolutely no problem. It's a joke that they're even playing in this region. Obviously, they don't have a choice because of location, but at this point, it feels really boring to even have them here, and it's all about just what happens internationally with these guys. Something that's a lot more fun about Group A, though, is the other team that got through, Timeless Ethereal, which just so happens to be a fully non-binary / all-women team. No team such as this one has ever made it this far into the OWCS tournament before, which is a major W for the Calling All Heroes community. Where they go from here is kind of hard to say, but there are some standout performers that are at least somewhat worth watching, especially if they go on some kind of lower bracket run, and it's all led by that DPS line of Bun and X10. These two were the leaders and the backbone behind this team's success, as they both made a multitude of huge plays that made qualification possible. And on top of it all, this team likes to play Rhine, so they're extremely based. Over in Group B, which I consider to be one of the more interesting ones of NA, we'd see NRG Shock and TSM qualify. While there was no doubt they'd be the standout favorites to make it through for sure, I think that they had a pretty good matchup against each other that was really telling for both sides. Starting with NRG, it's a little concerning to see them struggle the way they did in that TSM series, which was extremely close despite it being a 3-1. It very easily could have gone the other way. As one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to get second in North America, it's not a great look to be struggling in a group stage where you're supposed to be heavily favored like this. It was clear right out of the gate that they're still adjusting to the new roster they have, as well as some of the people that were important to them that moved on to somewhere else. There were some miscues and clear-cut miscommunication that comes with a new team like this, where it felt like some people were split, not always on the same page, and we even saw that result in some random Kellen dives with no help, and that time when PGE had over 20 deaths on Eichenwald. Honestly, sometimes it felt like they were giving this game to TSM, and they should feel very grateful that their opponents weren't able to capitalize. It's a bit worrisome in a tournament bracket like this. Maybe those kinks are gonna cost them potential series and a higher placement than they'd like, but this team clearly has a really high ceiling, and they definitely are the most talented they've ever been thanks to some of their recent acquisitions, and said acquisitions definitely made a good difference in that NRG TSM series. Ultraviolet seems like a pretty good fit next to Rack Attack, and he made an immediate impact, and the same could be said for Tree, who seems to give them another level of playmaking at DPS, and honestly, Kellen, despite being the Korean import with a lot of questions, had some good hard carry moments in that series that made a huge difference and allowed them to win some maps. Hopefully he's found his forever home here. Honestly, NRG might be the most interesting team to keep your eye on in this tournament, as there is a very wide range of potential outcomes that could follow them depending on how much they clean up their play from the groups. On the TSM side of things, it was good to see them punch upwards once again, after not really feeling all that relevant in Stage 2 and the Esports World Cup qualifier as well. Because if you remember, back during Stage 1, they were seen as one of the best NA teams, and obviously they still have the potential to be that kind of team, and their series against NRG is proof of that. In my opinion, they probably should have won this series. Like I said earlier, it felt like NRG were giving it to them at times, but they couldn't seem to capitalize for whatever the reason. I don't know, I feel rather conflicted on this matter. There was good and bad that came with this series. The good news is that they were competitive again. They have that fire once more, and they answered some really important questions about their current roster, showing us that they definitely can be competitive against some of the top dogs. But, simultaneously, they need to play better and make use of these opportunities given to them if they want to maintain top 3 in North America. Group C is where things would be the most surprising though, with Fluffy Dreamland surprisingly coming out as the 1 seed of the group over Citrus. Fluffy Dreamland came out on top in a 4-map stunning upset over Citrus Nightmare, who were one of the better teams in NA through the halfway mark of this season. It was a pretty crazy series, but for a lot of it, Fluffy Dreamland were certainly in control. They were able to run circles around a Citrus Nightmare team, trying to find a new identity of sorts, and you have to give a lot of credit to Haven and Chime, who were able to shut down Tap and make this their series to win. Getting first place here was super clutch, as they put themselves in a position to quite possibly make it to the upper bracket semifinals based off of the matchup they've got. A lot of credit goes to them. They were seen as underdogs, there was no guarantee they'd even get through the groups, and they got first place, so give yourselves a pat on the back. I cannot say the same for Citrus Nightmare though, as they had a very disappointing performance in the group stage. They just barely got second place by the skin of their teeth, requiring a reverse sweep against Shikigami just to make it here. That's a really bad look. This team was supposed to have already turned the corner because of what we saw on stage 2. This was their time to shine as one of the top teams in NA, as one of the well-established powerhouses, and they're going completely backwards. Credit where it's due for having some composure and making that reverse sweep happen and not giving up your faith on your own abilities, but man, it should not have been this close to begin with. Currently, they're handling life post-lethal very poorly. And unfortunately, this Citrus team has become rather one-dimensional with some of the things they are and are not comfortable running. Zeb just doesn't look that impressive on specific tank heroes that are really relevant right now. I haven't loved what I've seen from him on Sig, Ramatra, or Junker Queen. He's always been known for his Orisa, and she's just not in a great place right now to consistently be played. Luckily, they have Strider, who seems to do pretty good in that ball setup, but that does make them rather one-dimensional, and it raises further concerns about how good this team can be and if they can elevate themselves to the top again. Citrus are in grave danger after what I witnessed, and my confidence is all but gone. They've got to have a crazy stage 3, otherwise I think their chapter might be coming to a close. And finally in Group D, there's really not that much to talk about. It was clear that Nightmare and Timeless were going to be very obvious favorites, and they took care of business without question. Nightmare is the up-and-coming team. They seem like they have the potential to be top 2 in North America, and they certainly showed that during the groups, pretty much cruising by everybody they faced. This team had already shown us some great capabilities based off of Esports World Cup and the qualifiers beforehand, and now they're even stronger than they were before. From what I've seen so far, their DPS trio seems to have a nice little rotation going on, where it feels like Seeker and Lethal can go off at any moment, but then you forget about Zera and what he can do on the Tracer. And with Tank, 2 different players with very diverse skill sets that give them a lot of options. And the backline, I think, more than holds its own against like 95% of what else you could go up against in this region. They haven't faced the big challenge just yet, but I'm extremely confident in what I've seen from this team, and I'm expecting great things from them in this tournament. With Timeless, on the other hand, we weren't expecting them to be number 1 in their group, playing alongside a powerhouse like Nightmare. They just did what they were supposed to. I was hoping maybe they could sneak a map, but that was asking too much. There were some inconsistencies. I didn't like that they dropped a map to Team Z, but can't complain too much. Honestly, this is just a stepping stone for them. The real test with teams that are maybe more around their skill level is going to come in the actual tournament bracket itself, so there's no true way to judge this team until we get to that point. Luckily for them, and for us, we'll get that answer real soon, just because their first round matchup against Fluffy Dreamland is exactly what we need to have a true judging indicator. Speaking of the bracket, let's transition into that. My predictions, expectations, and some of the general things that we should be following. So of course, first and foremost, it's Toronto, rules everyone, don't really care about that. Below them though, competing at number 2, it feels to me like NRG and Nightmare will be in a heated competition for that spot. They are the 2 favorites to sneak into that place. Then trying to make an upset happen, or at the very least competing for top 4, you have teams like TSM, Citrus Nightmare, Fluffy Dreamland, and Timeless as well. It's that 2 through 6 that really matters in terms of entertainment and what's going to happen outside of the obvious. If you want my opinion on the bracket, this is how I think it goes. So Toronto, of course, get first place, probably don't even drop a map unless they decide to not care, but they feel pretty locked in, so I'm confident they will just destroy everybody in their path. Then at second place though, I'm going to go ahead and lock in Nightmare. It's unfortunate because they have to play Toronto in the upper bracket semis if they win their first round matchup against Citrus Nightmare, and that does mean there's going to be more pressure on them since they can no longer make any mistakes in that lower bracket, but I'm confident in this team. In my opinion, they have the slight edge over NRG as the clear-cut number 2 team in this region. When I look at their roster, I feel like there's less questions. Maybe the skill ceiling is slightly lower compared to what NRG can bring to the table, but they're more stable. They feel less questionable. They're less likely to have those big miscues that we've seen NRG have from time to time so far. The more stable team is the one worth going with, and I think they're the more hungry team. We saw this core beat the NRG core previously. Obviously, both have changed a lot, but that's a good indicator of what could be coming next. I think Infected knows the tendencies of his former team well, and I think Seeker and Lethal are ready to take their games to the next level and finally be a winner of some sort. Tree is really nice with it, but I've seen both of these guys do some crazy things in their careers, and I'm confident they can handle business and be the clear-cut better DPS line in this series. What matters at the end of the day is that they're around the same level in terms of skill, but Nightmare has a lot less of a randomness factor to go with them, and I think that'll be enough to get them over the hump. It might be a really close series, but I favor them. And for 4th place, albeit not with a lot of confidence, I think I'm gonna place TSM. It really depends on what side of the bed they wake up on for how they play. It's gonna require a lower bracket run since they play Toronto in the first round, but I kind of believe in them after witnessing what I saw in the NRG series. Some of my faith has been restored. It feels like there's a bit more life to their DPS line now with King, and I think they've got enough to beat anybody that I haven't named yet that's in this bracket. There's a lot of 50-50s, I think, with some of these teams they could play against, like Timeless, Fluffy Dreamland, hell, maybe even Citrus Nightmare if they get their act together, but just for the sake of wanting to see them do well, I'm going to throw them in 4th. Perhaps my stocks are too high just based off of one game, but that's what I'm going with, and that is my general consensus on the upcoming bracket. Let me know what you think about the NA main event for Stage 3 down in the comments below. Would love to hear from you, and if you enjoy OWCS content just like this, and you want to stay up to date with all the most recent Overwatch esports news, be sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.